Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So I'm here to do another birth chart analysis for one of my clients. So again, let's go ahead and start breaking this one down. So this is a female. She was born December 25th, 1984 at approximately exactly midnight, surprisingly. So she was born in Lardo, Durango, Mexico. I want to go ahead and state her rising sign. So as you guys all possibly could know, if you guys follow astrology, you guys know that once your ascendant sign is set up, it pretty much sets up the rest of your chart because the following sign precedes it. So your rising sign pretty much determines what the rest of your chart is going to look like. So in her case, she is a Virgo rising, which kind of fits her personality here. So pretty much Virgo risings are very calculative in regards to their appearance, their body, so on and so forth, because the first house represents the image that you have. It also represents the body in astrology, and it also partially represents your personality. So with her having a Virgo rising, so she would be very critical of her body because that's essentially the energy that Virgo carries. She'll be self-critical and then also critical of others as well. And she also has a tendency to be hard on herself. She might possibly be critical of her own appearance, and she also is a type of person that has to have everything neat, organized. I don't know what her house looks like, but I imagine like it's not too messy, right? So she's one of those people completely opposite to me. So moving on to her second house, it is ruled by Libra. So second house represents family. So having Libra in the second house would pretty much state that you're always trying to find the balance in life, the beauty in life. And also people who typically have this placement were born into a chaotic type of family environment. In this life, she's meant to find balance in her life, in her family, and she also might have ran into hardship within her family. So if she feels that things are bad at home, she's the type to scheme or to plan how to organize things. So let's say there's a problem in the family. She's the one who is trying to save the day, trying to fix an issue. Let's say, someone's short of money. She's the type of person to lend them out money. Oh, your car broke down. Okay, let you borrow the car, etc. So she's that type of person because she has Libra in the second house. Again, Libra is the mediator type of sign and tries to be very diplomatic amongst her family. So moving on to her third house, she has Scorpio here. So as you guys know, Scorpio is ruled by Mars. So in this case, since the third house represents siblings, also short distance travel, and your everyday environments, she would either be very involved with her siblings. She would also be very preoccupied with what her siblings are doing, or she would be very obsessive in regards to whatever might possibly be transpiring between her and her siblings, and then maybe their life. So again, relationships between the siblings are gonna vary from black or white. So it's either really good between them or it's gonna be really bad, since we have Scorpio here, which is typically the sign that rules war, that rules, being aggressive. So also having Mars here, Mars also energizes things or gives energy to whatever sign it's sitting in. So being that this house is also a house of communication, she would be probably a good writer or also a good communicator. And if she ever takes on writing, she could be good in a sense where she uses her emotions to really develop her writing skills. Alright, so moving on, she does have Saturn in the third house. So typically Saturn sitting in this house isn't necessarily, doesn't provide too many benefits. It might cause some issues, since Saturn is a planet that does restrict or gives you lessons in whatever house it sits in and whatever sign it sits in. So Saturn sitting in her third house would restrict relationships with her siblings. Relationship would be very professional amongst them. So typically she would not communicate with them much until much later in life. So maybe when she was younger, she like very minimally communicated with her siblings, only when she really had to. But as she progresses throughout life, she gets older, she might have more communication with them. So moving on, her siblings will try to always attack her. So that's why there could be some form of problems within the family amongst her siblings and herself. And since, again, Vedic astrology is based off reincarnation, this would just indicate that it's not necessarily siblings' fault. They're just pretty much playing their role in this life. So she might have done something bad in her previous life towards them, and then therefore now they're paying her back in this life. So that's pretty much karmic there. So the relationship between her and her siblings would probably be karmic. So she was born into a family where they are just playing their karmic role. Siblings will become a rivalry throughout life. Saturn makes mental concentration a little bit slow but steady. So maybe she's the type to, take a little bit longer to grasp certain subjects. But Saturn in this placement also does give her the capability to really focus for very long periods of time, since it also delays things, and then also the third house relates to your thought process. So from the third house, Saturn will aspect the fifth house of education. So this would indicate that her education would be delayed. So perhaps her college education would be delayed, or there'd be a long break within her educational path. Maybe she didn't go to college for a few years and then eventually ended up going back. This may also limit her from graduating from school or could possibly delay the graduation. So with this placement, she will also become a lifelong learner of philosophy or higher beliefs or ancient texts or something like that, right? So her philosophical views and true teachings come slow to her, meaning that she won't have a period where she learns so much knowledge within two years and she's pretty much set for life. For her, since Saturn does prolong the process, in this case, she's going to be gradually, gaining information in regards to her higher studies. So when she was younger, perhaps she wasn't as involved in these subjects that she's so much involved in nowadays. Maybe she was a little bit more ignorant when she was younger. Also, as she gets older, she gets wiser, kind of like wine, the older the wine, the better it tastes, kind of type of situation here. So that's pretty much how Saturn affects her in this way. Maybe also as a child, she could have been a very shy type of person. Saturn also in this placement particularly creates fear in a person, and it creates anxiety, which I know she actually does have. So that's where you pretty much start to see the accuracy in astrology, because these placement descriptions actually do match up to the reality in life. And so it brings fear into her regarding her efforts, like whether she's capable of doing this, like, oh my god, what if I fail at this? Oh my god, what if I don't pass this test? She needs to check herself, or she needs to be conscious of her thoughts in that aspect. So with having this type of anxiety or fear, she has to be careful not to self-sabotage herself with having all these negative thoughts all the time, or fearing what might possibly transpire in the future. She needs to learn to calm herself, and then also to think a little bit more positively and think perhaps there's positive outcomes to certain situations. Also, Saturn aspecting onto her fifth house will also restrict her love life. So she would have either had to date quite a bit to find her current partner or her husband. Also, with this placement again, since communications is what the third house represents, this could also possibly make her a very good novelist, someone who writes like a series of novels, because Saturn again delays or gives, the capability to do things for a very long time, or to produce work for a long period of time. Kind of like J.K. Rowling, she came out with her series of her books, you know, and Harry Potter became like this huge franchise, etc. From the third house, Saturn also aspects the second house, so this represents the teachings of the father. So this could have indicated that maybe she didn't have that many teachings from the father. Her father, you know, may have not been that involved with her. So having the fifth lord, Saturn, sitting in the third house, because again, the fifth lord, since we have Capricorn sitting in her fifth house, and then Saturn is ruled by Capricorn and now it's sitting in the third house, she would have the ability to educate herself and find love and passion in life come through creativity. So it's kind of advice for her to, I guess, take on creative ventures, whether it be writing or like maybe even doing things for the children, perhaps taking a painting or something like that, something that relates to the arts, because that's what the fifth house represents. Her education is always regarding the things that she is passionate about. So again, she's not going to study something unless if she's very passionate regarding it. The way she is going to make money in this life will involve speculative business. So if she wants to gain wealth, it more than likely is going to be through her own efforts, through establishing some form of business. She needs to try to find something that she loves doing, and with this, if she becomes passionate enough, she could make it into a lucrative career for herself. And this also makes her have a very competitive drive. Saturn in this house indicates that she will do business either through writing or administration. This will always make her make money through business or her own effort. So this is actually something that I kind of encouraged her to do, start her own business. So when we talk about, you know, she might do business through writing, I did encourage her to maybe start a credit repair business. So what credit repair representatives do, they communicate, so that's third house energy. It also involves some form of writing, right? Because you're writing letters pertaining to credit repair to certain institutions or creditors. So it makes sense. Also, this also causes her to not get along with her siblings again. Also, through her children, she will find creativity. So essentially, her children are the people who bring out the fun in her. Or she could also possibly find, you know, enjoyable activities with her children. Again, because fifth house relates to children. It also relates to anything fun and anything related to the arts or entertainment as well. Saturn also will give her tremendous willpower and being determined in regards to what she wants to accomplish or what she wants to do. K2. So she also has K2 sitting in her third house. And Saturn and K2 are only about 3 degrees apart, so that's considered a conjunction in astrology. So communication with siblings or close neighbors is detached. She feels isolated from her siblings. Her siblings may not be there to help her. She does not like working in small group settings also. In her previous life, she communicated a lot with her siblings, yet she was deprived of faith and religion in her past life. Since we have K2 here in the third house, that would indicate that Rahu, you know, is placed 7 signs apart because they sit completely opposite of each other, K2 and Rahu. So since we have K2 in the third house, that would indicate that Rahu would be in the ninth house. So pretty much K2 and Rahu placements indicate what you might accomplish in the previous life and what you seek to find in this life. So in her case, you know, she may have had a very close relationship with her siblings in a past life. Maybe there's a lot of communication there. Maybe they really, you know, at some point got along. But in this life, it might be the opposite, where also in the previous life, she may have not, you know, she may have been deprived of religion or religious studies. Therefore, in this life, that is something that she's going to desire to attain, desire to study, and to learn about in this life. She is also stern when it comes to her beliefs. So again, K2 aspecting onto the 7th house, the communication with her partner becomes a little bit eccentric. She will not have good communication with her partner, or she can have physical distance with her partner. So this could also indicate some issues in communication with her spouse, since the 7th house is the house of marriage, partnerships. When she communicates with her partner, she may go off on tangents, and her partner sometimes finds it kind of confusing to understand her at times. And also, it could indicate here that her partner either has like an eccentric personality to himself, or there's this weird little quirky nature about him. So now K2 aspecting onto the 9th house, she wants to communicate with higher spiritual guidance. She may have healing abilities in her hands, since from the 3rd house, which represents the body part of the hands, aspecting onto the 9th house. So I don't know if she knew this or she's ever tried, but she may actually be able to heal people with her hands. Also, she has previously told me that she kind of wants to open her 3rd eye or like be more in touch intuitively. So that's pretty much that placement that represents just that, where she wants to communicate with higher spiritual guidance, with her guardian angels, etc. Aspect to the 11th house, so she does not care to be a part of a large organization, communicating with her network circle. Alright, so since the 11th house in astrology does typically rule, your network circle, people around you, could be people from your job, could be your network or friends, group of friends. She's not the type to want to mingle with, again, large groups, large organizations. She does not care to be part of it. She's more to herself, or she kind of has an isolated type of personality. So now when we talk about the Saturn K2 conjunction in the 3rd house, this conjunction creates frustration in her career. She at times can question her profession, like, what am I doing in my life pertaining to my career, work? I don't feel happy here. I feel like I'm meant for something else. At one point in her life, she will turn to spirituality as well. She embraces spirituality. 20s and 30s, that's when she'll really question what she is doing with her career. Maybe consider possible career change there. So when we get into the specifics of Saturn, if you guys didn't know, Vedic astrology, so you have, again, the 12 zodiac signs. Within those 12 zodiac signs, there are specific stars in the constellation, which are considered nakshatras. And there's, I believe, 27 nakshatras, and one of which is Vishaka. And her Saturn is actually sitting like right where Vishaka is. So she needs to manage her business and spiritual side. She needs to humble herself as well and take a leadership role in order for her to find success. So again, she's not going to find success being an employee. She's not going to find success, following someone else's lead. She has to march and take her own lead. When she enters workplaces, she's typically involved into very chaotic environments where she's faced with a task of organizing things or fixing things, and that's, again, because of the Saturn energy in her chart. And her duty and karma in this life is to fix things, to arrange things. In her late 30s and 40s is when she realizes that all the experience in her life in the previous years of, like, taking leadership roles and having to, adjust certain chaotic environments is actually going to help her, or is going to also allow her to find some sort of success or to gain something from all that, from her past experience. So again, this kind of goes back to what I kind of recommended her to do is, again, start like a credit repair business. So what is credit repair? Credit repair, you go in, you open, you dissect people's credit, you peer in to see what they owe, what the issue is. Again, it's chaotic because you're dealing with someone's, credit mess, financial mess, and you're having to fix it. So I honestly think that she's actually going to start releasing bad karma when she actually starts working in this field, or when she starts being of more service to people and fixing chaos in their lives, especially, in this case, would pertain to credit, would pertain to their finances. So she helps people in that sense. I feel like she's actually going to, even out some of her bad karma from her previous life. Okay, so now getting into the specifics of K2 and what Nakshatra sits in. So her K2 is actually sitting in Anuradha, and this indicates that she would actually use occult knowledge to transform her life, which I think she already is doing. Because again, she kind of works with me on a one-to-one basis. You know, occult knowledge, it could be tantricism, like it could be magic, it could be, you know, it could be this astrology to transform her life. And then moving on to her fourth house, she does have Sagittarius here, so the fourth house does rule your family life. So her family life, you know, since we have the influence of Sagittarius and Jupiter here, because Sagittarius does typically rule the planet Jupiter, her family becomes very philosophical and religious, and so eventually in her life, her mother ends up becoming a friend to her. Okay, also since she does have Mercury in her fourth house, so Mercury rules communication, represents your intelligence, it represents, you know, your logic. It's also, you know, the planet that rules business and communications, as I mentioned. So since the fourth house does, you know, typically represent the family but also the mother, this would indicate that her mother's teachings could have been very communicative, or they had a lot of communication going back and forth, even if it was bad. Her mother could have also had her own business, possibly, or the mother could have been very communicative with her. Therefore, it is likely that she would be very communicative with her own children, because the fourth house also represents mother's teachings. And her mother would have had a really big influence on her intelligence, on her life. Also, since Mercury sits in Sagittarius, this could indicate that her and her mother would communicate a lot pertaining to religion or spiritual beliefs, because that's what the ninth house represents, which originally ruled Sagittarius, or that's what Sagittarius represents. It represents wisdom. Also, this also indicates that she could possibly have a home-based business, or she would benefit from doing so. And since the sixth house, which is the house of enemies and conflict, is third from the third house, this indicates that she would be able to solve conflicts through her intelligence or her logic while sitting at home, possibly with having a home-based business. All right, so moving on. Since we do have the first lord, Virgo, sitting in the fourth house, which is technically Mercury, she is very private and she likes to be home, and she could be very connected to her mother, and she would obtain conveniences through her mother. The mother is again a huge influence on her life. Now we have the 10th lord in the fourth house. So again, we're talking about Mercury, and the 10th house is being ruled by Gemini. So now Mercury is sitting in the fourth house. So her reputation depends how well she is at home. Work environments feel like her home, or she would like working from home. She would rather have a home-based business than a public or commercial one. So I'm going to move on to the fifth house. So the fifth house is being ruled by the sign of Capricorn. So again, the fifth house represents children, and it represents education, represents the arts and entertainment. So since it is being ruled by Capricorn, the fun and creativity gets taken out of this house, or anything related to this house. So it pretty much feels like a chore or a duty for her to, you know, have children, possibly. Or perhaps, again, since Saturn rules the sign of Capricorn, this would indicate that she would be very disciplined, or also possibly strict with her children. In regards to her own education, Saturn delays education, or again, she will not formally get educated until later on in life, maybe in her 30s or after her 30s. Now we have the sun, which in astrology represents the father, and it is sitting in the fifth house. And the sun also represents personality, career, and your ego. So she would be very disciplined and organized. She is very law-abiding, and she will have fear and anxiety. She also has fear and anxiety regarding herself and her ego. If she gets criticized and she becomes fearful and doubtful regarding herself. She is fearful of every action she takes, especially in the public life. She will want to organize everything in her life. Her father was strict. her father would have made her very disciplined, and she's also likely to rise in her career. If Saturn is in a bad position, she would rise to rank but then be lowered. Or if she were in employment, she would get a good job and then maybe she'd lose it or something like that. So that's how, Capricorn and Saturn kind of influence her chart quite a bit. Her father, since we're talking about the 5th house and it rules education, and we're talking about the sun, which rules the father in astrology, this could indicate that her father was a teacher. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I feel like that's pretty accurate because he was actually a teacher in Mexico. All right, so moving on, we have the 12th lord, which is the sun. Well, actually, okay, we have the 12th lord of Leo, which is technically the sun sitting in the 5th house. So she would love to express herself through creativity, through spirituality, and her children are going to be also very creative and imaginative, and she would also likely involve her children in spiritual teachings. So also this indicates that she would be strict with her children, and her children at times could resent her for being strict or being too strict. Jupiter in the 5th house, Capricorn rules her 5th house, so therefore she is likely to meet her husband at work, since Capricorn rules the original 10th house of career. So we move on. We have the 4th lord in the 5th house, which is Jupiter. So children will provide comfort and security. So what do I mean by this? So later on in her life, once her children grow up, they may provide her with comfort and security. So let's say, her eldest daughter goes on to get a really good education, or she gets a really good job and she's earning pretty well. Her daughter might be the type to make sure her mother's taken care of. So that's what I mean by, she might gain some form of conveniency through her children. And since the 5th house is second to the 4th, 5th house subjects will bring her income or wealth, such as children, speculative business, arts, etc. So if she chooses to focus on anything that represents the 5th house, she's likely to gain income from that. Her mother was a huge part of her educational skills. Her mother may have taught her that through spirituality, studying scriptures is really what gives her a sense of security. Also, this can show that she can be a teacher of finance. Moving on, we have the 7th lord, which, 7th house is being ruled by Pisces, and now Jupiter is sitting in the 5th house. So she typically wants a spouse to help her creatively express herself, or she wants her spouse to be fun. She will only likely marry someone who she has a tremendous love for. She wants her spouse to be gifted and involved with her kids, or also be involved with their spiritual views. So we have the 6th house being ruled by Aquarius. So this house is also ruled by Saturn, since Aquarius is originally ruled by Saturn. So for some reason, Saturn really, really, really influences her chart. So since we have the 6th house, again, ruled by Saturn, of enemies, diseases, this could cause a lack of energy in her. Since 5th house is 12 from the 6th, so this causes illness and will be due to the fact that she gets overstressed, or she has to dedicate a lot of energy to raising children, studying, or thinking, solving problems. So also we have her moon, which represents again the mother. It represents the mind and your emotions, your emotional responses to things. So her mind is constantly dealing with conflicts or emotional, whether if it's emotional or internal, since we do have, again, 6th house, the moon being placed in the 6th house. So she's constantly thinking, that she has to be on the defensive with people. She constantly has to be defending herself from people because of her enemies. because she will have the tendency to have a lot of enemies in her life. So she's always in this defensive mode because she's been attacked so much through life. Her mother could have also been a source of conflict for her. She could have conflict with her growing up. Her mother would have worked in a field of service to other people. So I did ask her what her mother did for a living growing up, and she said that she actually cooked and she cleaned houses. So again, that's considered being of service to others. Her daily work life would involve solving conflicts as well. And her siblings and professional network circle can also become enemies. Since we have the 11th Lord in the 6th house, which is the moon, which represents mother, mother would have taught her to emotionally connect to people around her. And we also have Venus, 2nd Lord, sitting in the 6th. And this would indicate that she would build wealth through enemies or conflict. She also will have a lot of conflicts when she forms relationships. She creates relationships with people that will take away her wealth. So Venus also represents the marriage, and since it aspects the 12th house of losses, she could also incur losses in her marriage or through her spouse. So this actually did happen, I think, because of her husband, so on and so forth, some mishap happened with the IRS and they had to pay back all this money. And also, since Venus represents vehicles, she has to be careful with accidents related to vehicles. And also because, again, since it aspects the 12th house, she's not careful, this could cause her to, again, lose money, incur losses here. So we move on to the 9th Lord in the 6th house. Again, we're talking about Venus. This placement becomes her Dharma and Karma, since it is 10th from the 9th house. Hence, 6th house will be her vocation. So again, she's meant to work with solving conflict. That's going to be her Dharma. So if she's incurred a lot of bad karma in this life, that's going to be your way out by solving conflict for people in life. No matter how much she has in this life, she feels constrained. No matter how much material fortune she has, it will never feel like enough. This placement will give her a competitive characteristic that will make her want more and more. This placement is good for business. Her everyday routine work life can involve education or being a teacher. Spirituality also becomes important in her everyday life. So maybe she's very spiritual on a day-to-day basis, or she's doing spiritual things on a day-to-day basis. She could also read religious texts frequently. Through higher learning, she is able to help others with debts and diseases because this is what the 6th house represents. Mars is also sitting in this house. So again, with this placement, when Mars goes into the 6th house, this has the possibility of making you incur debt throughout life. So again, Mars is sitting in the house of enemies, and Mars likes to act as a soldier. So her day-to-day work life would deal, again, fighting for things, disputing things, aka credit repair. For instance, you're disputing collection agencies. Also, this placement is good for lawyers if, I'll say it would have been good for her, for one, if she didn't have a lot of anxiety. Two, if, her learning education would have not been delayed. But I would say go with starting your own business. A bad thing with this placement can indicate that she would incur a lot of debt in her life, but again, she is able to pay it off since Mars is a winning soldier. So again, Mars gives her, fighting power. So if she does happen to incur debt, she'll be able to get rid of it. This could also be an indication of bankruptcy in some cases, but that's only if the 3rd house is like not doing so great. But in that case, she has Saturn, so I feel like that's maybe the reason why she hasn't had to file for bankruptcy, because Saturn also gives you the tenacity to solve issues, solve problems, and it would have been aspecting the 6th house. So 3rd Lord in the 6th. Again, we're talking about Mars. So she will communicate regarding conflict, debt, or diseases. She is shrewd but also smart. Her self-effort goes into defeating enemies and can have a lot of conflicts with her siblings. Eighth Lord in the sixth. Again, we're talking about Mars. So her everyday work life or routine can deal with handling other people's emergencies, other people's income, or taxes. Through dealing with disputes or enemies, she will find transformation in her life for the better. Through experiencing someone else's death or sudden event, she will gain in life. She can also find gains in enemies, as in lawsuits. She can also gain enemies as in-laws or have a lot of disputes with them, also over money or joint assets in the marriage. She can also get into disputes regarding wills or estates. Okay, so I already kind of spoke to her regarding this. So it might be later on where she might have to fight for a will, or she might have to fight for estate or property. So we have the seventh house being ruled by Pisces. So her married life is ruled by Jupiter, so she tends to lean towards smart partners or takes preference to educated or spiritual partners. So her partner again could be intellectual, could be smart, but also he can have an odd personality. So he might be into weird stuff that other people are not into. So we have the eighth house being ruled by Aries. So this indicates again that family and joint assets. The eighth house represents family, joint assets, longevity of life, and life vitality is determined since it is ruled by Mars. She is very headstrong about joint assets with the family. She may like to have a separate bank account from her spouse or would like to contribute to their joint bank account cautiously if they do have a joint one. Right, so we have the ninth house being ruled by Taurus, so religious beliefs and higher learning. So she tends to lean towards religion that is different from herself. She may marry someone of a different culture or religion. Or if it's not that, her religious views can be strong since Taurus rules this house, and she tends to lean toward New Age type of religion or beliefs. So again, she's not going to go with traditional beliefs like Christianity. So we also have Rahu sitting in her ninth house. So she would like to be knowledgeable regarding higher knowledge of spirituality. Rahu wants to set a new religion. She will want more and more material things in life, and she will strive to obtain all her material desires. This is a good position to gain wealth. Rahu in the ninth can potentially take her on long distance travel to foreign lands in search of herself or spirituality. Also, since we have Rahu here, supposedly this definitely takes people into foreign lands, so I was kind of thinking about it. I'm thinking like she was born in Mexico, but now she's in the US, so I mean she went into foreign land. So moving on, we have 10th house ruled by Gemini. So 10th house rules her career. So she will make a good writer, communicator, since this house is ruled by Mercury. Mercury symbolizes, again, the hands. And she makes a good teacher, very good business mind. And she could also be really good at sales. So again, I feel like she's kind of cut out for business, or that's where she should focus. So we have the 11th house being ruled by Cancer. So her friends actually may become more important to her than family, again, because her family life seems to be a little bit problematic, or the relationships tend to be a little bit problematic. Moon rules the emotions, so she will be very emotionally invested into her social circle. The moon represents the mother too, so she will likely want to become friends with her mother. Mother could have been also very social, and so we have the 12th house being ruled by Leo. So 12th house represents spirituality. So this can be a troubling placement since Leo rules this house, and Leo is ruled by the sun, which enlightens you, but it also acts as a luminary, and it's a hot, star, so wherever it sits, it could either be good or bad. So her 12th, 4th, and 8th house are ruled by fiery planets, so this causes her ego to dominate her spiritual life. or she wants to become very spiritual and be recognized as a spiritual person. Ego comes into play of spirituality, and she could also be very creative because 12th house also rules imagination. So that's pretty much the breakdown of her chart. Thought it was going to take longer, but essentially kind of looks as though her education is delayed throughout life. She would have a lot of enemies through life, but again, that's karmic debt that she's paying back in this lifetime. And her dharma appears to be in 6th house related subjects, which is again dealing with enemies and dealing with conflicts. And I feel like she would also gain from doing so. And I feel like she has potential to gain wealth, but again, it's through her own efforts. It's with dealing with conflict. So again, you know, the business I kind of recommended to her, credit repair, seems to do just that, because you're dealing with conflict, you're analyzing people's credit, you're disputing, you know, certain, you know, bills, etc. So yeah, I think it's going to work really well for her, or I think her life will probably change quite a bit thereafter. Okay, so yeah, and if you guys like these videos, please like, share, and subscribe. If you guys are interested in a birth chart analysis, you guys could email me, or you guys could reach out to me on Facebook as well. I only do a certain limited amount of birth chart analysis, since I do a ton of other things as well. But reach out to me if you guys want one. Okay, so again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.